Okay, so we are going to start the we do, you do part of the activity. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at solving the missing sideling in word form, in word problems. Okay, so our first we do, it says that I have a large tree that casts a shadow. So I have a large tree that casts a shadow that's 32 feet long. A shorter tree, so I have a shorter tree, casts a shadow that is 10 feet long. The large tree has a height of 48 feet. And it says if the large tree in this is similar to the small tree, how tall is the small tree? Okay, so I'm looking for the height of the small tree. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to identify my corresponding sides. I have the height of the large tree, and I did it with a squiggly. And the height of the small tree is also a squiggly. And then I have the shadow, which is stitching, of the large tree, and the shadow, which is stitching, of the small tree. Okay, so now I want to set up my corresponding sides ratio. I want to start with the x. Okay, so I want to make sure I set up my ratio using the x. Okay, so the x of the small tree, it is the squiggly, so I'm going to put it over its corresponding side, which is the squiggly of the large tree, and it's 48. And then I have to use the other ratio. I have the 10 feet from the small tree and the 32 feet from the large tree. Those are my shadows. Okay, so remember, you have to make sure that the order in which you set up your proportion is correct. The x came from the small tree, the 48 came from the large tree. So I am setting up small over large. Make sure that your second ratio follows the same thing. 10 feet came from the small, and the 32 feet came from the large. So not only are my corresponding sides set up correctly, but my ratios are also set up, the order in which I put my numerator and denominator. Okay, so from here, I'm going to cross multiply, and I'm going to divide. So 48 times 10 is going to give me 480. And I'm going to take that 480 and I'm going to divide it by 32. Okay, 32 goes into 48 one time, 32 when I multiply. When I subtract, I get 16. I'm going to bring down my 0, so I have 160. Okay, that's a pretty large number that I have to divide. 160 divided by 32. So I'm just going to estimate. I know that my number ends in a 0, so I'm going to try 5 first, because I know 5 will give me a 0 in this one's place. So I'm going to say, well, what is 32 times 5? 5 times 2 is 10. Carry my 1. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16, and that's going to actually give me what I need. So 32 goes into 160 5 times, and it's going to divide evenly. It's going to terminate. Okay, so the height of the small tree is 15 feet. Okay, you got to make sure you know what you are solving for. Okay, pause your video, do the you do part. When you get your answer, check it, raise your hand and let me look at it, and then you can move on to the we do of the next one. So pause your video. Okay, so now we're looking at the we do of the quadrilaterals. Okay, it says quadrilateral ABCD is similar to quadrilateral EFGH. What is the measure of HG? All right, here is HG right here. There's my X. Okay, so I'm going to start here when I mark up my quadrilaterals. Okay, so HG or GH is the last 2 letters of the quadrilateral. So I need the last 2 letters of the first quadrilateral, and that is CD, and that is right here. So I'm marking it up the same way. Okay, then I need the other number, which is HE. So I'm going to mark it. HE or EH is the first and last, and so I need the first and last, which is AD, and it goes here. All right, so now I'm ready to set up my proportion. I'm going to start with the x, so it's x over. It is a stitching, so I come to my large quadrilateral and the stitching is 10. And then I go back to my small quadrilateral because that's how I started. HE is 12, and it's the stitching. And then I come over here to the large quadrilateral, and it is 8. Okay, again, I started with the small quadrilateral to the large, small quadrilateral to the large, so I know my proportion is set up correctly. Okay, so now I'm just going to cross multiply and divide. 12 times 10 is going to give me 120. And then I'm going to take that 120 and I'm going to divide it by 8. 8 goes into 12 one time. When I multiply, I get 8. When I subtract, I get 4. I bring down my 0. Remember, you can pause the video at any time to catch up. 8 goes into 40 5 times. And so my missing side length, HG, is equal to 15 meters. Okay, go ahead and pause your video. And you can do the you do part. Remember, when you have it marked up, make sure you raise your hand when you have it solved so I can check your answer before you move on to the we do of the triangles. Pause your video. Okay, we are now down in our last example of the we do of the two triangles. And so let's take a look at this one. It says if triangle ABC is similar to DEF, what is the value of x? Here is my x. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to mark it up with the squiggly. That is AB. Okay, so AB is going to match DE, and it is this one on the other triangle. So I'm going to mark them the same. Okay, so then my other number is coming from the large triangle BC. BC is the middle and last letter of my setup here, so I need EF in this other triangle. So EF is right here. Okay, so I know what I have, what my corresponding sides are, so now I'm going to set up my ratio. I'm going to start with the X. X is coming from the stitching, is coming from the squiggly. So I come over here to the small triangle and my squiggly is 13. And it is going to equal, I come back to my large triangle and the stitching is 9. And the stitching on the small triangle is 15. Okay, so I want to make sure that I set up my proportion correctly. I started with the large triangle, and then I went to the small triangle. I came back to the large triangle, and then I went to the small. So I know that my order is correct. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply, and I'm going to divide by 15. So first I'm going to go 13 times 9. Remember, you can pause your video at any time to catch up or to write your notes. 9 times 3 is 27. So I'm going to carry my 2. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 2 is 11. And so I have 117 divided by 15. Okay, so now 15 does not go into 1. It does not go into 11, so I need a number that's going to go into 17. So I'm going to estimate a little bit. I know that 15 times 2 is 30. So 15 times 4 is 60. 15 times 6 is 90. And so I'm going to try 15 times 7. So I'm going to come off to the side and I'm going to go 15 times 7. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 3 is 10. So I get 105. And I know that I don't have another group of 15. So it's going to go into it 7 times. When I multiply, I get 105. When I subtract, I get 12. So I'm going to have to put in a decimal and a 0 and bring it down. Okay, so now I need to know how many times does 15 go into 120. Well, I know that at 7 it was 105, so I'm going to try 8. 15 times 8. 5 times 8 is 40. Carry my 4. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 4 is 12. So I get 120, which is what I need. So 15 goes into 120 8 times, and it will terminate And so my x, which is AB, x is going to equal 7.8 units, or 7.8. Okay, so again, I want you to pause your video. Well, actually, this is going to conclude the video. I need you to do the you do part of this activity. Raise your hand when you have your answer. Okay, and if everything is right, then this will go into your notes along with right next to your anchor chart. Okay, thank you.